What's up, everyone? Welcome to a new episode of Moon with Life. Andy here. And today the semester's finally over. I haven't got all my grades back yet, but it's like I told my wife yesterday, it's done. And with that, literally as soon as I finished my last final, I went and bought this new book titled Drownproof by Andy Stumpf. It just got released. I got through the afternoon and started reading it last night. Even in the first pages, there's a little piece here that made me think. It is my hope that no one finds themselves staring over the edge into the abyss with the balance of their life or their hopes, dreams, and aspirations resting in someone else's hands and judgment. I personally do not think that you need to take it that far to recognize that the first and most critical step in a young man or woman's life is to change their perspective of who they are and the role they play in their own life. You are responsible for your behavior. You're responsible for the emotional reactions that you have to the things that happen to you. Integrity cannot be outsourced. And this is the part that really made me think. Until you view yourself as the author of your life, you will be the victim of it. When I read that, I read a little bit more, but that statement, that sentence is what made me think, what would I tell my college self? Because even as I gone through this semester and seeing these younger students, navigate their own life, it's not just about working hard, but also about actually taking the ownership and the responsibility of what you're doing day to day. And the semester, check that box. Cool, we made it through. We survived, as one of my professors had stated as well. And this episode, yes, it's about ownership, getting through and accomplishing things. But it's not just about that, especially this today's topic and using this statement, it's about ownership over your actions and your habits. And especially, and I think this is a part of the one I'm gonna very, very much, I'm gonna really harp on, is your emotional reaction. A lot of us are fine about talking responsibility and taking responsibility and, I have to do this for work and I have to do this for school. I need to do X, Y, and Z. But your emotion of how you feel about something or something that happens can also dictate a lot of that. And one thing I realized, and this is the first point, is being busy is not the same thing as being disciplined necessarily. When I was in college, I worked full-time. I worked full-time, I was going to school full-time. Sometimes I even took 15 hours in the semester, which was, I look back at it, it was crazy. And I feel like it did affect my grades. But nonetheless, I was doing that. At the same time, especially around 2012-ish, is when I was really trying to become a better guitarist because I wanted to be a musician. That was my goal back then, was professional musician. And cool, I was busy. I had a full schedule with everything to do. Now, in hindsight, I realized that just because you're busy doesn't necessarily mean that you're disciplined or you're putting your energy into the right things. And when I say it like that, it's because the main piece I think of back then that I wish I would have, obviously I wish I could have done a million things differently, right? But the main one that I think of is my personal finance. I shouldn't have been, no, it's not that I shouldn't, I wasn't saving the way I should have been saving. But it's taken me all these years to get there. Circling back and coming back and reeling it back is, yes, I had a lot going on, but just because you have your life full of things on a full schedule, your full calendar, doesn't mean that your life's in order necessarily. And I wouldn't say I was struggling because I really wasn't. It all worked. Obviously, it all worked out. I'm here, right? But it was working out then too. But I wasn't paying attention to what those decisions then were gonna cost me, kind of in the long run. And I think one thing I tell myself is work hard, but it doesn't mean that working hard means to have a full schedule. It might mean to start really prioritizing things and work hard at those particular things. Again, one thing, having 15 hours of a semester of classes, that's 5 classes, which is a lot, no matter what. Some people can do it. But again, I was doing school, but my focus was trying to be a musician. And then the work, when I was working, that was just my income. I needed some income while I was going to school. The next part that I immediately think of because of that was how hard-headed I was then. It was the simple fact of I thought I knew more than I actually. And even now, if I were talking to myself now, I feel like some of my response would be, I know what I'm doing. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I know what I'm doing. And a lot of that's ego. And one thing, again, that I'm realizing now is confidence and ego doesn't mean you're always correct. And a caveat is that at least I was trying to do things the way I saw fit. And I would encourage that, is because you have to take ownership in some way. But there's this like power trip that can happen because of the ego. And if I had been more honest with myself and more, because even sometimes I knew what I should have done, but I still didn't do it. And so that's where the humility would come in, is like, hey, you know you need to do this. You know you need to save money and not touch it. That's where the humility would come in of like, okay, I'm not going to touch it. Which again, now I feel like I try my hardest to be very diligent about that. And then the last point to tie in, hey, you know you need to do this. Take a pause and then do what you know needs to be done. Well, that emotion of like, I know what I'm doing. Like, don't being defensive, right? In this little example in particular, you're not in control of every single detail of the circumstance, but you can be responsible for the response. Feels kind of redundant, but and then that feeling of maybe a little bit of resentment or disdain. I guess disdain would be a word too, but resentment, disdain, and defensive. Hey, take a pause, because you can treat, and I feel like I'm guilty of this even to this day, of you can treat your emotion as a reason to take action on something, or it gives you it gives you permission to do something, and that's not always the case, especially if you act on it automatically. If there's no pause, even for a second, 90 seconds, whatever that looks like, it doesn't always mean that it's the best thing to do. And so I think one of the things I'm dealing with now is not having too little emotion. And it doesn't always mean you need less emotion. Emotion is what makes us human, really. But it's what we do with it that's the important point. I think the driving point I'm trying to make here as we start closing out the episode. Being busy doesn't always mean you're working hard. If you're reactive all the time, it doesn't always mean that you're disciplined. It doesn't mean you're undisciplined. And you should chase your. I say this especially, as we're closing out CCD for the year, and I want them to be ambitious. I tell them you should have hope, you should have faith, you should be ambitious, you should have goals. But with those goals doesn't mean you have, again, and this is what I'm learning now, what I'm seeing now is, doesn't mean you always have a full calendar. You don't need to have 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. full of things. It happens, and people do that all the time. It's part of business culture. But the main thing is, regardless of everything I just touched on, until you decide to be the author of your own life, you could fall into that victimhood and being a victim in your life. And so, closing out today, I would tell myself, hey, you don't have to have a full schedule. To the point of you want to sleep on your time off, or you are getting lower grades because you would rather try to do more classes up front and think that you'll be able to just push through and get all A's and B's, which that wasn't the case. Humility. Really discovering what humility means. And it doesn't mean to not work hard. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm just going to quit this thing. That's not what I'm saying either. Being able to contain the stress amount per semester, per week, per day is that humility of like, I'm going to get through this. I have this goal, but I can do it in spaces, in spurts. I think humility and being the author of your life are the things to go hand in hand for today's episode. I think that's why, as I was reading that this opening chapter for Andy Stumpf's book, which I'll show you again here, Drownproof, is the encouragement, and again, it was his first chapter. You can and you should be the author of your life. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me. Again, obviously, I'm not getting anything necessarily from we'll say talking about this book, promoting the book, but I'm in it. This is one of my summer readings. I have another one that I want to do, and maybe I'll be able to bring something I get from that other book as well once I finish this one. But nonetheless, if this episode hit home, like, comment, subscribe. If you on Spotify, if you're listening to us on Spotify, give me a rating, give me a follow. I appreciate it. Drop a comment about one thing you can tell your younger self. What's something that you realize now, however many years later, it could have been last year, your younger self, it could be. What would you tell yourself? What's one thing you tell yourself? And so with that, until next time, keep moving with life.